This tutorial is for 4th grade, Module 6, Lesson 1. In Module 6, we're going to study decimals and how they relate to fractions. So in Lesson 1, my first problem says to shade the first 7 units of the tape diagram, which you can see I have already done. So my tape diagram has been set up where it starts at 0, it ends at 1 whole. It has been divided into 10 equal pieces, and I shaded 7 of those pieces. And when we talk about fractions, that means that I would have shaded in 7/10 of the tape diagram, 7 out of the 10 that make up the whole tape. When we're looking at decimals, the tenths place is the first place after the decimal point. So 7/10 as a fraction would be written 0.7 as a decimal. Now we're going to label each section of the tape diagram to show how it lines up against our decimals. So the first section was 1/10, and that section ends at the 1/10 mark on the number line, and this is how I write 1/10 as a decimal. At the end of the second section would be 2/10, so where that section ends is 2/10 on the number line. As a decimal, that's written 0.2. Moving on, we now have 3/10, and where that section ends, that's 3/10 on the decimal number line. I have 4/10, where that ends is 4/10. Then 5/10, where that ends is my 5/10 point on the decimal number line. Next, I have 6/10, and I'll show where that ends on the number line. And finally, we have 7/10, and where that section ends, that's 7/10 on my decimal number line. I can continue writing in my tenths. The end of the next section would be 8/10, and the end of this section would be 9/10, and that brings us to 1 whole. And we'll go ahead and circle 7/10 as a decimal because that names the portion of the tape diagram that was shaded yellow. The next problem says to write the total amount of water in fraction form and decimal form. So I have a 1-liter bottle that has been partially filled with water. This 0.5, that represents the halfway point. The entire bottle would be 10/10. This decimal is 5/10, so that's the halfway point, and that mark is at this line on the bottle. We need to figure out how much water is in the bottle if it goes up to the next line. Well, each section is 1/10, so if I count, there's 5/10, 6/10. I'll write that first as a fraction, that's 6/10 of a liter. As a decimal, I would write it 0.6. Again, the first spot after the decimal point is my tenths spot, so I would read this as 6/10 of a liter, just as if they were written in fraction form. For the next bottle, I have the same thing. It's a 1-liter bottle, which is a total of 10/10, and I can count my tenths to see where my water line ends. So this would be 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10. So as a fraction, I have 8/10 of a liter of water. To write that in decimal form, I would write 0.8, but I would still read it 8/10 of a liter. In the next section, we'll continue to see how decimal forms and fraction forms are related. So on my first scale, I have some broccoli and lettuce. The scale is showing me that together they weigh 4/10 kilograms, and now I need to write that as a fraction. So 4/10 as a decimal means 4 out of 10/10. So 4/10 as a fraction would just be 4/10. In the middle scale, I have some fruit. It weighs 8/10 of a kilogram. So in decimal form, 8/10 is 0.8, and it reads 8/10 kilograms, just the same way as a fraction. And finally, I have some rice. You can see on the scale that the 0 is at the top, 5/10 is at the bottom. There are 5 sections that go around the side. So each of these sections would be 1/10 of a kilogram. So the scale reads 1/10, 2/10. So the rice weighs 2/10 of a kilogram, and to write that as a fraction, we would write 2/10. In the next question, we're going to write the length of the bug in centimeters, first in fraction form and then decimal form. So if I look on my ruler, the ruler goes from 0 centimeters to 1 centimeter, and that centimeter has been broken into 10 equal pieces. So the bug comes out at about the 5/10 mark, so 5 sections out of the 10 that make the whole. So in fraction form, we would say that the bug is 5/10 of a centimeter. In decimal form, it's still 5/10 of a centimeter, but now we'll write it 0.5. It still reads the same way. Decimal form is 5/10 of a centimeter. The next question says, how far does the bug need to walk to put its nose at the 1 centimeter mark? That means it needs to continue walking from here to here. That would be 5 more tenths of a centimeter to get to the 1 centimeter mark. So it still needs to walk 5/10 of a centimeter. The next section says to fill in the blank to make the sentence true in both fraction form and decimal form. For example, first question says 8/10 centimeters plus blank centimeters equals 1 centimeter. Well, 1 centimeter is the same thing as 10/10 of a centimeter. If I have 8/10, then I need 2 more tenths to get to 1 whole centimeter, or 10/10 of the centimeter. Same thing over here. If I have 8/10 in decimal form, I need 2/10 to get to 1 centimeter, or I can also read that as 10/10 of a centimeter. So 8/10 plus 2/10 equals 1 whole centimeter, or 10/10 centimeters. For question B, I have 2/10 of a centimeter. I need 8 more tenths to give me 10/10, or 1 whole centimeter. Same thing in decimal form. I have 2/10 of a centimeter, and I need 8/10 of a centimeter to give me 1 whole centimeter. Question C, I start with 6/10 of a centimeter. I would need 4 more tenths to make 1 whole centimeter, and then same thing in the decimal form. 6/10 of a centimeter would be added to 4/10 of a centimeter to get 1 whole centimeter, or 10/10 centimeters. And in my last section, I'm going to match the unit form of the number to the fraction form and to the decimal form. The first problem has been done for us. We have 3/10. As a fraction, that's 3/10, and as a decimal, the 3 is in the first spot after the decimal point, which is tenths, and we read that as 3/10. Next, I'll look for 5/10. That's 5/10 as a fraction. Here's my decimal for 5/10, so I will connect that. 6/10 would be 6/10. Now I need a decimal that has a 6 in the tenths spot. That would be this decimal. Here I have 9/10, so looking for the fraction, that's 9/10. And then the decimal would have a 9 in the tenth spot. And finally we have 2/10, so that would be 2/10 as a fraction. And in my decimal, I need the 2 in the tenth spot. So again, fractions and decimals are referring to the same amount. They're just different ways of displaying that amount.